Okie dokie, and we're ready to start. Hey there, folks. This is Dr. Dawn coming to you with the Inside Out Franklin Outside episode today. As you can tell, I'm broadcasting from inside the first floor of my home, and we're going to keep today nice and short and sweet because I hope, like me, all of you are really hankering to get outside. Today, I thought we'd do something just a little bit different, and it's really been inspired by my activities over the last couple weeks. As all of you at home know, I've been out photo hunting, whether it's been on a run or a dog walk with my family, and I've been noticing that I can't get all of the nature photos that I really, really want to get. Now, all of these nature photos, some of them have been beautiful and up-close flowers, grasses, weeds, shrubs, etc. But you'll notice that I've had a lot of trouble capturing birds, stuff that's really, really common here in the city of Philadelphia, right? So I want to be able to capture those beautiful images that are all in my neighborhood and throughout the city's beautiful parks. I also, of course, don't just want to capture something that's very, very far away, but I also really want to be able to capture something that's really, really tiny, right? And I don't necessarily have the tools at home to help me do that. Or do I? It turns out that I do, and you probably do too. So today, again, we're doing Franklin Outside a wee bit different. We'll be broadcasting live from inside because I'm going to show you a couple tricks of the trade. I've been talking to some of my birder friends and some of my naturalist friends about how I can capture those images from far, far away. Maybe it's that distant bird. Maybe it's a beautiful, beautiful tree on the horizon that I can't quite see using my camera phone. And also we'll be talking about how we can use our phones to look at that really, really tiny microscopic stuff. And today it's all about the science of lenses. So why are we talking about lenses here on the Franklin Outside episode? Well, it turns out that lenses help us magnify to see those images. So let's start first with the two different types of lenses. And I've brought along a little board here to help me draw what I'm talking about. Now, it's probably a pretty common term that you've heard. You've heard that term lens. For any of us that uses these bad boys, we'll be very intimately familiar with what a lens is, right? Does anybody out there wear these, right? Tell us about it in the chat box. Do you wear glasses, and why do you wear glasses? Well, for me, it's because I'm nearsighted. That means I can see in the near field. I can see things that are very close to me, like my camera screen, like my computer screen and my camera right in front of me. So I won't be needing these today. But that also means that I have trouble seeing in the distance, in the far field, right? So I'm nearsighted, I need help seeing in the far field. So I need a lens to help magnify that image. And lenses are exactly what's built into our, certainly our glasses there, but also in a couple common household items, perhaps a pair of binoculars you might have hanging around. If you have a pair of these, go ahead and grab them. We'll be using them today. And also in one of these. And if you're not familiar with this is just yet, you're going to find out. If you do know, perhaps you're a pet owner, go ahead and tell us in the chat box what the heck this little silvery thing is. But all of these items in our homes have lenses in them, and they have a special type of lens. They have what's called a concave lens. Now, there's two types of lenses. There are concave lenses, and there are convex lenses. So let's talk about a convex lens first. Now, a convex lens looks something a little bit like this. I'm drawing upside down, so forgive me if we're a little misshapen here. But a convex lens is a lens that gets fatter in its middle. And so what does that have to do with anything? Why does that help us magnify an image? Well, it all has to do with how light travels through that lens. So if light is traveling towards my lens, let's imagine it's in sort of these parallel lines here. Let's imagine that's light radiation coming towards my lens here. And what happens when that light hits the edge of my lens? Well, some of you might be familiar with this, and the word that comes to mind is refraction. So as light is traveling through the air, it's less dense, it turns out, in the air. As it hits the lens, that material is more dense than the air, and that light that's traveling through slows down and it begins to bend. And as it bends through a convex lens, it bends inwards. Okay, so light traveling towards my convex lens hits the edge, material becomes more dense, that light wave slows down and begins to bend. And again, what do we think happens as the light wave starts to exit the other side of the lens. You might have guessed it. Again, we're having a material transition, aren't we? We're coming from the lens here. It's a little bit more dense in the air. As it exits, it further bends into a point on the other side of the lens. So let's go ahead and imagine that all of my wavelengths are doing that here. Right on. Okay. So we can see then that all of my light that's coming in, that's sort of spread out, begins to get sort of concentrated, doesn't it? And it all meets here at a single point. Now, what's that point called? That's called my focal point. So I'm just going to write that down there so we remember it, my focal point. And that might be reversed for you because of the lens that my camera is using. And we'll talk about why that is right now. Now, when I want to zoom in on an image, when it looks exactly perfectly in zoom in focus for me, perhaps I'm looking through a magnifying glass. That means that the distance that my magnifying glass is away from the material that I'm looking at is within that focal point length, or my focal length is my distance from the lens out to my focal point. But we'll notice that that light just doesn't stop traveling, does it? No, of course, that's just where all of this light radiation is coming back together. It's converging together. It will continue on beyond that point, won't it? And so if I see an image beyond that one focal length there, if it's two focal lengths, let's say, that image begins to invert. That's actually what you're seeing happening here on your computer screen now. Okay, so a convex lens can help us see things from a great distance because it's helping gather light and it's creating what we are seeing as a magnified image. So that's a convex lens. The opposite of a convex lens is a concave lens. And we'll just draw this, but we won't spend too much time talking about it. And a concave lens looks something like this. It's the opposite of a convex lens. Instead of getting fatter at the middle, it's actually getting a little bit thinner. So just as I needed my glasses to see into the distance, some people need glasses to see closer up, perhaps reading glasses, okay? And so those types of lenses actually use a concave lens. And now here, we're having a similar feature happen. My light is traveling towards my lens, but instead of turning inwards, it begins to be refracted outwards. All right. So it might look something like this. Now, these types of lenses are great for when we want to disperse light. So we might see a movie projector, for example, using a lens like this. All righty. So why the heck are we talking about lenses again on the Franklin Outside episode? Well, I mentioned to you that I don't have all the tools at home that I want and I need to be able to see stuff that's really far away. So I need to use lenses and the science that I understand behind them to help me see some of those things at a great distance. For example, my favorite bird. We have one great question that has nothing to do with lenses, and that's excellent. Remember, we're just using lenses to help us observe the world around us. And my question here is, what is my favorite bird? I have to say that my absolute favorite bird is the red-winged blackbird. And the red-winged blackbird is absolutely stunning. You should go ahead and search it on the web right now. It is a blackbird as it sounds, but it has a very special coloration on its shoulder patch, particularly the male species. And that shoulder patch is an emblazoned red mark, a little bit of yellow coloration around it. Now you can find red-winged blackbirds right here in Philadelphia, down by the John Hines Nature Reserve, for example. I even spotted one very, very recently, and it was along the Schuylkill River, a little bit further north of the South Street Bridge. So you can find red-winged blackbirds usually near brackish waters, open waters. They like to hang out near coastlines. That's why you'll see them down at John Hines. Okie dokie. So if I want to spot a red-winged blackbird in the distance, I can't really use my phone, can I? No, I have to use it in tandem with something else. And for that, I'll be using my binoculars. So I've just got a little pair here. It's a little 16 times pair, because it cost me about $25. And I'm going to use it in conjunction with another little high-tech piece of technology here, isn't it? Well, this is a rubber band, it turns out. Now, there are many tools available out there. If you have the resources available to pick one up, go ahead and check it out and let me know how it works for you. These tools can help attach to the lens of the binoculars, and you can snap your phone right into them. And using your phone's camera and using the lenses that are inside the binoculars, remember those convex lenses that we just drew out on our paper there, that's what's happening inside our binoculars. So I can use my camera phone in tandem with those lenses to take a photo from a great distance. So we're going to try that now in my first floor. So you may get a little peek inside, so don't mind the mess if you see any. Remember, we've been social distancing, so we've been trying our best. And for our second tool here, I'm going to pull in my phone that's on a tripod to my left. So I've already got my camera hooked up on here, so I'm going to start the video live. And there it is. Now you can see what's happening behind the scenes. Here's our drawing. My laptop has been propped up on some old cookbooks there. And I've got some other fun things that we'll talk about in just a moment. So what I'll do is I'll mute that and I'm going to set it up onto my binoculars. So I'm going to take my phone and I'm going to pay attention to my two lenses here. Turns out if I can get in real close there, you can see that camera phones nowadays actually have more than one lens. And those lenses help with that magnification that we were talking about. Some are better for up close photos that are very, very wide. And some lenses are better for zooming in to see things in the distance. So I noticed on my phone that when I zoom in, I switch from using one lens to the other. So go ahead and play with your phone and find out which of those lenses is best for seeing into the distance. And that becomes handy because that's the lens that I'm going to try and line up with my binoculars. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to place my camera phone onto my binoculars here. I'm going to attach them with a rubber band that I've got handy here from my organic asparagus that I had last week for dinner. Absolutely delicious. And we'll see if we can snap a photo through the camera lens then. So I'm lining those up right now. I'm doing that off camera where you can't see me. And I think I actually need to bring you in. So let's go ahead and do that now. So here's my camera. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to line up on that lens. And I want to make sure while I'm doing that, that I'm looking at something that's kind of light, right? So now that's a really fuzzy image. What the heck are we looking at? Well, there we can see it. We're actually on the bigger lens that I mentioned there. This is on one of the lenses that sees better up close and wide angled. But I want to see better than this, right? That image isn't so great. I can't really capture an image of a bird very well, can I? So that means that I haven't lined up my binoculars on the right camera phone lens. I'm going to bring that back down. I'm going to take a peek at which lens I was on, and I'm going to adjust. So this time we'll zoom in first. You'll notice a change of my lens. And that's what just happened there. All right, so we'll hold that lens up again. And this time, hopefully we'll have a better image. Whoops, let's do that one there. Great. I'm looking at you upside down. Always experimenting here at the Franklin Institute, and that's okay. We have to find the right way to get this going. You can see I'm having some trouble lining it up there in between my camera phone and my binoculars. What I'll do is first I'll reline this up using just my eyeballs. Ahoy, neighbors. Now we'll try this one more time with my camera phone. Okay, zooming in, and there we have it. Okay. Now, I'm a little bit shaky there, but hopefully you can see that image as I see that image. Get our lens off one more time. All right, a little bit of a clunky experiment, but we'll get it there. Well, my zoom lens has changed again. So I think I'm going to pause on that one, and we'll come back to it at the end. Okay, so remember, if you'd like to do this successfully, and I think you swear that you can, go ahead and line up your binoculars and use your camera phone to peer through one of your lenses. From there, you can snap a photo or record your favorite nature observation that otherwise is too fuzzy and too distant. And we'll try that again right at the very end to see if we can see something that's a little bit far away. In the meantime, though, let's take a little bit of a transition here and talk about really, really tiny stuff. So we said we can use lenses to see very far away from us. Well, we can also use lenses to see things that are quite close to us and that are itty bitty. So we're talking microscopes here. And we can also, it turns out, turn our phone into a microscope. So for this, I'm also going to need a couple extra materials. And for those of us that saw me pull this out earlier, I'm not on Facebook, so I can't see if any of you guessed it, but it turns out that this is a cat toy. So for any pet owners out there, you might be familiar with this silly little toy. It turns out that it's just simply a laser. So it's a strong light in there that's concentrated into one tiny point. And it's thanks to that little nose at the end there that helps us focus that light. Well, inside of the laser is a special type of convex lens, and we can use that convex lens for our own purposes in this particular activity, and it's to help use our camera as a microscope. So how does something like that work? Well, it turns out that we can very, very easily take this apart. So for parents out there, you will need to help out your kids with this activity, but once you get it set up, there is no additional work. So this is a one-time job for you. So that little nozzle there, I've already taken the batteries out, so you can unscrew the batteries on one side, and you can undo the cap there. Now, I just easily screwed it off. The first time I needed to use some pliers, though. So you may need to use a little bit of elbow grease to pop this guy off. And here's what that looks like on the inside for those of us budding engineers out there. Really interesting, isn't it? This is just a little screw cap, and it concentrates the laser light as it's exiting from the inner tube. And underneath that cap then, don't worry, we took the batteries out so we won't blind you with any laser light here. You'll see that little black plastic housing. Now it might be kind of tough to see here, but I did take some photos and we'll post them afterwards to share with you for how to dissect this step by step. If you go ahead and you pop out that plastic housing, again, I've already done this, so it's a little bit easier for me to do now, but this is also just hand screwed in there. And take out that little plastic housing, and inside is a very, very tiny convex lens. Now, the convex lens I've already removed for my own purposes as I've been playing around with this microscopic feature. And it looks like a couple folks responded, it is a laser pointer, good job, keen eyes out there. And here's what that little lens looks like. I'm gonna remove it from some housing that I've put it in, so that you can get a really nice close-up view of that little tiny lens. Now, this is the little lens that was removed from that housing. And I'll leave that there for you, so hopefully our Wi-Fi connections can get in nice and sharp on it. It's really teeny tiny, isn't it? Well, that lens there is a perfect example of a convex lens. Remember what we said at the beginning of our episode today? We said that convex lenses take light and they converge it, sort of bring it all together. So if I were to zoom this in, I could magnify what I was looking at. So now I want to know how I can attach this to my phone. Well, there's a couple high-tech ways that you can do this, but again, we're going low-tech today. That's what we like to do at the Franklin Institute. Anything that we can make easier for you folks at home. And so to attach that little lens to the outside of my own camera phone, I'm going to use mounting putty. Now, for some of us at home that have made poster presentations, you might have this handy. You can also use it, of course, to hang posters in bedrooms, etc. You can pull a little piece of that mounting putty off. That's what I've got here. Here we go. You can see it right in front of my face there. And I'm just going to squeeze it out. It's kind of sticky. And it's good that it's sticky because we want to be able to attach my convex lens to my camera phone. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to inspect that lens. I want to ensure that the edge of the lens that's bulging outwards is facing my sample. Okie dokie. So I'm inspecting the lens now, and I can see that it bulges that way. You'll have to do this for your own at home. An easy way to remember which way the lens is bulging outwards is to remove the lens in the same orientation that it was sitting in when it was still in the laser pointer housing. We know that because it's trying to converge the laser light coming out of the tube, it's going to be converging in this manner, right? So my lens is going to be bulging outwards. And that's exactly the orientation that I want to remove the lens from the housing and attach it to my own phone. So I'm just manipulating some of that stuff right now. It's a little sticky, a little tricky, but what you end up with is something that looks like this. A little tiny bullseye, a little donut there. Now that mounting putty, again, that sticky stuff, I've just put it around the outside of this plastic lens. Alrighty. Now I'm going to put this plastic lens over my camera phone lens. And remember, I want to make sure that I'm using the right camera phone lens that's meant for the zoom feature. My phone, and your phone may have 1 or 2 or even up to 3 different lenses on your phone. But for my phone, I have 2 different camera lenses. I want to use the one that's used for the zoom feature. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm attaching that to my cell phone. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. And there it is, really simply, sticks on like a little donut. So now I'm gonna we'll try one more time here. Hopefully this time we've got the right alignment for you at home. I'm gonna bring that video back on. Okay, so you can see well now down at my little sample sheet here, can't you? And what you're looking at is just a couple specimens I had lying around at home. Now, why don't they look magnified? Remember, this is because I'm on one of the lenses that's meant for zoomed out wide-angled photos. But when I zoom in, watch what happens to my camera. And I think I'm going to need to share my screen for this then. Let's see if we can do that. Yay, this is why we test things, isn't it? Which we did test. Try again this way. There we go. We needed to switch lenses there. So now it looks really, really fuzzy, doesn't it? And that's because I've adjusted the lens over the proper photo lens now. And I'm not in line with anything. I can't see anything because I'm not at the right distance from it. Remember, we need to be at the perfect distance such that that focal point, we're within that distance, that focal length between the edge of the lens and the focal point. So I'm going to get really, really close here to some of my samples. Also brought along an extra little flashlight to help me zoom in. So from a distance, you can sort of see I've got a dime set up here, and we're going to get nice and close to that dime. Oop, that's my salt sample, but that's okay. We can hang out on my salt right here and zoom in there. So I think what I'll do is make a supplemental video as well. On the Zoom app, we have a little bit of trouble focusing here, but here we can kind of get an idea. I'm looking at the edge of a dime here. They are absolutely beautiful. I hope that you can see that focused angle as well. I can see all of those micro abrasions or those little tiny scratches on the edge of the dime. You can also see those edges there, those indentations on the side there. They're absolutely beautiful up close. That is really, really gorgeous. So if I wanted to know the magnification power, like, am I looking at this at 5 times larger, 10 times larger? Well, I would have to know the magnification power of my lens, and I would have to know the magnification power of that laser lens. If I were to multiply those two together, I'd get the total magnification power here. So we could do that pretty quickly offline, but we'd have to do some homework about our camera lenses first. So I'm just looking at a dime here, and I'm going to try and move a little bit more. Hopefully we can keep our focus up quite well for you. And I'm going to come across the top of the dime, and I need to play a little bit. You'll notice it's really finicky, isn't it? You know, why is it so finicky? It's picking up on all of my micro shakes. My hands aren't perfectly steady. And so that's what you're seeing in the camera as the shakiness. Of course, it's not the surface that's moving, it's my hands. So if I were to want a really, really nice, sharp image here, I'd want to lay my phone flat and perhaps prop it up just above my sample using something nice and flat. So that's my dime there, but you also saw earlier that I had some salt crystals, didn't I? Let's come in closely on those and see if we can inspect those a little bit. Now these are a little bit trickier to get to, but we'll try. There they are. Now, what do we notice about the shape of these salt crystals? Go ahead and I'll give you a minute there. You can sort of kind of see a crystal something in there, right? But it looks like it's almost got a tail. It looks like a comet or something, right? That's actually just the shadow that that sample is casting. And that brings me to another important part about microscopy work, or using your phone as a microscope. And it's that you have to have a really good light source to be able to see sharply. Now, I'm holding a flashlight up off screen and it's casting those shadows. But the most ideal way to do this really would be to have a light source beneath my sample. So for that, for my final sample, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this flashlight that I've got handy. I'm going to prop it up. So it's standing vertically now off screen. And I'm going to take my next sample, and I'm not going to show you what it is, but maybe you at home can guess what we're looking at. So again, forgive me for the micro shaking here. We'll go ahead and remove our camera. Whoops, our sticky tape got stuck there. So we'll have to reapply, no problem there. And that's what I really love about this tool for the parents watching along. You can drop this. It's not going to get injured in any way. It's very easy to clean. It pops right on and off. I've been playing with this all weekend long. And here's what it looks like. Remember, really easy to take off and put back on. Doesn't damage the phone lens at all. Okay, so let's zoom in on my final sample that I think is really, really cool looking. And I was really floored when I first saw this. So let's get up nice and close. Okay, I'm a little bit shaky there. But can anybody guess what we're looking at? I'll give you a minute while I try and rove around. Oh, there's a really nice view. Again, picking up on those micro movements. Those are my hands shaking, but hopefully you can see close up here. Almost looks like, well, I don't know. What do you think it looks like? Go ahead and tell us in the chat box what you think we're looking at here. I could sit here all day. I don't know about you folks, but we'll go ahead and we'll turn that off now. So what we were just looking at actually was individual plant cells, which is really, really cool. We were looking up close and personal into a little oak leaf that I have here. So what I'm hoping to do then is use these activities to move forward and talk a little bit more about plants and what we find in, for example, the pond. Hopefully next week we'll get to do a close-up image of our pond. So somebody said veins of a leaf. Yes, you're absolutely correct. And if we zoomed even further into our leaf, we could see those individual cells. And that's the real amazing point that I wanted to share with all of you today, that using a very simple little tool, a silly little cat toy, we can make a really powerful lab grade lens right here in our own homes. Now, in that document that I mentioned that I'd love to put together for you, I'll share a step-by-step guide on how to dissect that laser pointer and how to put it onto your camera for fun. Now, we were quite successful turning our camera into a microscope, but I do want to try and return to using our binoculars to turn our camera phone into a little bit of a telescope. And I think what I'll try and do is a couple things. The first thing I'll do is clean off my lenses. Now, for those of us photographers at home, you know that it's always important to use a microfiber lens. I'm using a Q-tip here to make sure that our lenses are free of any dust. So I'll go ahead and I'll give this one more go. And fingers crossed, folks out there, that's a fun view, isn't it? There we go. Maybe you can see up my nose properly there. And let's give it another go. So we were successful making our camera phone into a microscope, but let's turn it into a telescope again. Again, well, for the first time, I suppose. We weren't successful the first time, were we? So remember those steps. I'm going to line up my binoculars first, make sure what I'm looking at is nicely in line. I'm going to use my magnification up on top. And I'm going to line up my binoculars, my camera phone with my binoculars. And I realize the tricky thing that's happening here is because my phone screen is not locked. So let's go ahead and try and lock my phone screen. And you're getting the intimate tour of my house here, Dr. Don's house. Again, hopefully it's clean enough for everyone out there. Oh goodness, we're having trouble again here. So let's not belabor the point. We'll just go ahead and we'll put that camera on mute. So what I'll go ahead and do is snap some photos that did show that the camera phone and the binocular setup do work. Remember, I was just using a simple little rubber band here. Go ahead and try this at home, and hopefully you can get it to work and send me some photos and put me to shame for embarrassing myself today on our Facebook Live event. So go ahead and try and snap those photos for me and share with me what you're able to find. Maybe it's your favorite bird, maybe it's your favorite tree. So that's what we've got here for how we can use simple science of lenses to help us see things that are in the distance and also that are really, really tiny and really up close. And I hope that next week you'll tune in and help out with another little activity of mine. We'll be using that homemade microscope that we just created together. But before I go, I did want to share something that is really, really important to all of us at TFI, and I know is important to all of you tuning in at home. And it's, if this COVID-19 pandemic has taught us anything, it's that science matters, perhaps more than ever. And hopefully through these activities, you'll see that we're trying to find new and innovative ways to connect with all of you at home. And if you've been looking for a way to contribute or give back or lend a hand somehow, we have a way that may work for you. Next week, you can join a global initiative. It's called Giving Tuesday Now, and it is in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I know that I find a lot of joy in supporting these causes each year, and hopefully you can find a way to do the same with your family and your loved ones. If you'd consider donating to the Franklin Institute that day or any other day, we greatly appreciate it. But as always, go ahead and check out our website. Go ahead and check out fi.edu. We have free offerings each and every day of the week, and we're always looking to engage with each and every one of you at home. Thank you for your ongoing support, not just here today with Franklin Outside activities, but also, of course, anything that's happening at the Franklin Institute. So with that, this is Dr. Dawn signing off on our special Inside Franklin Outside episode. We hope to see you next week, where we'll use that microscope technique to take a peek at some pond water and some other really, really cool nature samples that are hanging out in my backyard. Hope to see you there.